Welcome back. You're watching Global Eye. The U.S. midterm elections are more than 70 days away, and President Joe Biden's approval ratings have been on a slippery slope. So in a bid to regain the voters' trust, the White House has announced a slew of populist measures to regain the voters' confidence. The significant decision was on abortion rights. President Biden signed an executive order to help women travel out of the state to access abortion facilities. Biden also introduced an Inflation Reduction Act, which aims to curb inflation by reducing the deficit, lowering prescription drug prices, and investing into clean energy. President Biden also signed an executive order to kickstart the implementation process of a $280 billion CHIPS Act to boost domestic manufacturing of semiconductors. And in a bid to woo young voters, the president has said he will waive off $10,000 worth of student loans. So will these measures give President Biden an edge in the upcoming midterm election? What are the key issues that the voters want addressed? Taking this forward, I'm joined by Nelson Cunningham, Vice Chair, McClarty Associates, and Amber Phillips, political reporter at the Washington Post. Nelson Cunningham, if I can begin with you, how important is the midterm election? A few months back, Biden was losing popularity. Do you feel the abortion rights issue will perhaps be the most critical in this election?
Thank you, and it's wonderful to be here. Wonderful to be on with Amber Phillips, who I read whenever her byline appears in the Washington Post. Wonderful to see you. Thank you for including both of us. 4 months ago, the election was trending strongly away from Democrats and toward the Republicans. The midterm election is critical because Biden's hold on the Congress is extraordinarily narrow. The Senate is literally 50-50. The House, which is much larger, has only a few votes. He cannot accomplish anything unless he holds on to both houses. The next years of his presidency will be effectively a dead unless he is able to blunt Republican gains and to maintain control, if he can, of both houses. 4 months ago, I would have said it was highly unlikely he'd be able to do that. The abortion rights decision, which you mentioned earlier this summer, began to change the narrative. That there was a terrible shooting in Uvalde, Texas, which killed many young children. That led to a bipartisan gun deal, which is something that Congress has been able to act on this, followed by the CHIPS Act, which you mentioned, which again garnered bipartisan support to support our semiconductor chip industry. There was the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, and on and on and on. The last several months have seen a change in my view, in the fundamental position of this election. And we've seen that play out in some of the by-elections and some of the that we've seen in past weeks.
Right. Amber Phillips, just to get you in, as far as the polls right now, what do the polls indicate as far as the midterm race for the House of Representatives, for the Senate, and for other local elections in the U.S.? What are the odds?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer because there's so many elections, right, that are happening in November. But I think Nelson is right that the past couple months, and we're really seeing it play out in the past couple weeks, especially this week, there is a fundamental change in how American voters feel about who they want to represent them. So one poll that we look at a lot here in America to tell us who voters might want to represent them in Congress is called the generic ballot. And it's if you ask a voter, would you rather have a Democrat, a nameless Democrat, or a nameless Republican represent you in Congress? Just to get at that pure partisanship that we have quite a bit here in America. Republicans have been leading by a lot in this, and that historically suggests that they'd be able to pick up maybe dozens of seats in the House and take back that slim majority in the Senate that Nelson was talking about. That being said, Democrats are catching up, and even by some measures leading just a tiny bit in this poll about the generic ballot. And that suggests that, at least for right now, the midterms are still a couple months out, there is an energy among Democrats, and it's mostly tied to abortion, although I do see evidence that concerns about democracy. President Biden talked about this week. He called Republicans semi-fascists. I do see that bubbling up as well as a concern among Democratic voters. And it suggests, I think it's a long shot that Democrats could keep the House, but it does suggest that they could maybe keep the Senate and a lot of these very important state and local and gubernatorial elections.
Right. Nelson Cunningham, coming back to you, and this is a point that Amber had also said that Biden recently, in one of the political rallies, had said that you need to save democracy once again. You need to go out and vote. He was urging all Democrats to come out and vote in big numbers. Why do you think this is so crucial for Biden and a poor show in the midterms? How could this affect Democrats in the days to come after the 8th of November?
Well, that's an excellent question. One of the issues we have in America, as a Democrat, I'll say, we often say we're not members of an organized party, we're Democrats. Democrats are famous for not aligning well, for not being as disciplined as Republicans of the fundamental issues of voting. And so Democrats tend to vote less regularly than Republicans. So even though Republicans may be a smaller percentage of the electorate, they turn out more, and therefore that gives them more power. Biden is trying to change that around. He is trying to get Democrats enthused, turn out at the polls. Republicans in state after state are trying to tighten voting laws to make it harder for people to vote, because they know that their voters, Republicans who tend to be more disciplined, will turn out even in the face of bureaucratic obstacles. Democrats may be discouraged and may not vote. This is a state-by-state battle that's been fought for years, but will come to a head this fall. It is Biden's challenge, along with the other Democrats who are running between now and November 8th, to get Democrats unified, enthused, supporting the candidates who they are putting up for governor, senator, for House, and get them up and voting. And I would say that we have seen a sea change in how voters might be reacting. I think the statistics that Amber Phillips quoted are right on and are very important here. Biden fails, it may be the end of his effective presidency. We saw both Barack Obama and Bill Clinton lost one or both houses after their first 2 years. And although in broad strokes they had successful presidencies, it limited their ability to pass legislation. And that, of course, is critical to really being able to accomplish what the nation needs.
What's the imprint of Donald Trump on the Republican campaign in this midterm election, Nelson Cunningham?
Well, my Republican friends, when I ask them, all say that if Donald Trump does run, if Donald Trump does in the primary process, he is highly likely to defeat all the other Republican candidates. He did it last time in 2018, and they frankly see a repeat of that in the Republican primary process. Then we get to the general election. He still holds powerfully onto his support across the country. I will say, and this is very topical, I used to be a federal prosecutor in New York. I used to work for Rudy Giuliani, oddly enough, before his latest chapter. So I have been following very closely Trump's legal problems, including the search of his home in Mar-a-Lago, which found highly classified information that he had improperly taken from the White House, and that both he and his lawyers had neglected to turn over despite repeated requests from the federal government. It's astonishing and appalling to me as a prosecutor that he would be in that position. But my point is, it is beginning to shape voter sentiment about Trump, and will be to his detriment, at least in a general campaign, if fail in a primary.
All right, my final question to Amber Phillips. Amber, do you expect some more economic measures to be announced by the Biden administration to keep the support of the Democrats up in the run-up to the midterm election?
I'm not sure what else they can do. That's a good question. I think what comes next is for Democrats led by President Biden to campaign on all the legislation and some of the executive orders that you talked about at the beginning of this segment. And the main economic one is one that Democrats call the Inflation Reduction Act. And they're really hoping it lives up to the name. Economists I've talked to say, we don't know yet. But what it does is it lowers prescription drug costs for millions of Americans, and they hope that ripples out to the rest of America as well. And then it also invests the US's largest investment ever in trying to mitigate climate change. And as President Biden talks about, in trying to boost clean jobs here in America. So that's something that they're going to campaign on. That being said, it takes a while for this to go into effect and for voters perhaps to feel the effect on their wallets. Gas is going down, but as we all know, presidents or world leaders individually don't have much say in gas and oil prices. And so I think that President Biden and Democrats mostly are just trying to cross their fingers and hope that they can convince voters that they're trying to make the economy better, because that is still very much top of mind for many, many voters here in America. But a lot of this is out of their hands and has been for a while, especially inflation.
All right. So it'll be an interesting race, and it'll be good to have Amber Phillips and Nelson Cunningham back on CNBC-TV18 in the weeks to come. Thank you once again for joining us here on Global Eye, giving us your view on the midterm race in the United States. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Global Eye. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.